All right, and I'll also change the setting so that it's not gallery view, but a little bit of a different view. So hang on just a sec. Whoops. I think I just managed to mess us up here. There we go. All right. I have you on speaker view, and I'm going to just read a very brief introduction and turn the program over to you. So it is my privilege and honor to introduce Meido Barbara Anderson, whose title of her Dharma talk and Dharma presentation today is Leave No Trace. And Meido is the guiding teacher at Oan Zendo, a Soto Zen temple in central Pennsylvania. She received transmission in the Kobun Chino lineage, and I had a chance to meet Meido for the first time last year when we were in a book study together, reading a very heady book called In the Buddha's Words, and I was so grateful she was in that group because that was a challenge, and glad we had a chance to face that challenge together. So, Meido, the floor is yours.
Greetings, Santa Barbara. I kind of feel like a political greeting. Hello, Santa Barbara. From across the continent, from what we sometimes fondly call the tundra. This is the first day after many weeks where we are above freezing. So it's nice to be able to join you, and thank you so much for inviting me to offer a talk. I do see you. I would really love to meet you individually, to know who I'm talking to and who I'm talking with. Thank you for giving that panoramic view. It'd be nice. It'd be nice to know each one of you, but alas, in Zoom land, it's often not possible. Most of the time, I offer a talk on an issue that our Sangha is struggling with, or perhaps one of our Sangha members is struggling with, or that I am struggling with, that I am puzzled by, that I am preoccupied with, that shows up in my life, with very vividly. As I don't know your Sangha, I wish I did. The first two reasons for being responsive with a Dharma talk are not available. So I don't know what your Sangha is struggling with. I don't know each of you individually, what's compelling in your life. So the default is to offer a talk on what I'm struggling with, and what is at issue for me. So I hope you'll indulge me in a personal reflection and an exploration of something that is an issue for me. And hopefully it has a relevance to your own life. And perhaps you can help me move through it, because I haven't moved through it yet. I'm still preoccupied with it and still exploring its many dimensions. This talk began to form during the wildfires in Los Angeles. I was very moved by the images of people returning to their homes and standing in front of the rubble, in front of the ashes, unrecognizable. Their home was unrecognizable. Their lives were completely reduced to ashes. Nothing was left. And so there was a sense of barely a trace, if any, of what was previously something very familiar and very close and very significant. This leave no trace or facing no trace of what was familiar has been on my mind, because there is in our practice a phrase that's very important, which is called leave no trace. And there is a repeated theme of burning, of fire in our practice. It occurred to me that there are a number of very important aspects, teachings in this practice, which talk about burning. For example, some of you may be familiar with one of the early discourses, which was the fire sermon. And it was a sermon about the burning of our senses, that we are on fire with the three poisons: greed, anger, delusion. So there is that burning of this being, which of course our practice is designed to either burn completely out or to quench the fires of those poisons that burn within us. And then, of course, in the Lotus Sutra, there is the parable of the burning house, in which a father is in a decaying house with lots of children playing with toys, and the house is burning, and the father is, of course, in some sense, the Buddha or Bodhisattva, wants to help the children escape from this burning house, to help them to leave their toys that they're so preoccupied with, to move into another space, arguably the space of the Dharma. So this is a construction, the burning house. And then, of course, many of you may be aware of Basho's poem or haiku, my barn has burned down. I can now see the moon. And then, if we need yet another example of the burning and the no trace, we can go to the Genjo Koan, Dogen's Genjo Koan. To study the way of enlightenment is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things. When actualized by myriad things, your body and mind, as well as the bodies and minds of others, drop away. No trace of enlightenment remains. And this no trace continues endlessly. Buddha's enlightenment was followed by some words that he spoke, which I'll get to toward the end of this offering, which also includes the deconstruction of the house on fire. In fact, we can certainly find parallels to this house in our culture, in our society today. This house that we've built is on fire. There are many fires burning in our lives. Everywhere from a, incredibly intense blaze to smoldering, simmering fire, and everything in between. Things are burning. And these fires often reduce and transform our lives into ash. In my lineage, the phoenix cloud lineage, the phoenix is the perfect example of the bird absolutely burning out and reduced to ash, only to result in, well, that's a whole other story. So this house, let's call it the house of the self that we build almost from the day that we're born. This construction. And what is this constructed self made out of? It's made out of stuff. Look at all this stuff behind me. This is stuff, lots of stuff, materials, all the stuff that was burned in those homes, including the home itself, materials, wealth, accumulation gives us a sense of substance. This house is made of relationships. I'm a Dharma teacher. I have a relationship. Some of you are parents, relationships, friends, careers. We're always in relation, and our self is constructed with those relationships too. Family, friends, colleagues, strangers. And our constructed self is also made of plans for the future. This is what I'm going to do with my life. That's part of the self's substance, apparent substance. Myself is made up of my reputation. Am I a decent Dharma teacher? Do people come and listen to me? Do people think well of me? Our self is made up of that as well. All the certainties that we hang on to, I call them the twin towers of our lives. Absolute. We're going to be in this relationship for the rest of our life. These are my beliefs, and they are the roots of my life. They're not going to change. I'm absolutely certain about that. And our sense of self, you know, how do I think of myself? Part of this construction. So we build the house of self. And it seems really permanent. It's very familiar. We know all the stuff in it. We're attached to all of it. And it's unthinkable that our house would ever burn down. Maybe somebody comes and takes a few things, or things change, or a tree falls down and breaks our roof or breaks the window. But you know, those are minor details. Maybe we lose a relationship here, but that, you know, it's just one aspect of this mansion, this mansion of self that we've built. And so our response to the shock of the fire and the loss of everything familiar, it could be that our wealth disappears in some radical way, or a relationship that we counted on breaks, is betrayal, or all our plans for the future are now dashed, or something we were so certain about. Now we realize, how could I have believed that? So this response to this radical loss, not just of a few things, but it seems like of everything that was familiar. Sometimes it happens with our health. All trace of the familiarity has disappeared. And so our response can be varied. But two of the most obvious responses would be, one, a kind of inconsolable grief. And we dwell in that loss and long for the return of what was. Or what is often happens is that there's a kind of a panicky drive to rebuild everything. You know, as soon as the towers went down, the first thought was, let's get them back up again. Rebuild. But our practice urges us to leave no trace. Can we meet those ashes? Can we face that groundlessness of everything that we held and we attached to as this life, this being? Kodo Suwaki says, gain is delusion, loss is enlightenment. We want to leave a mark. We want to have a legacy. We want to have beneficiaries. I'm 81 years old, and I want a successor to carry on my legacy and my teachings and my style. I want to leave my mark on this world. I don't want to have my life be one of invisible ink, where as I continue to live, I leave no trace. Everything I do disappears. Everything I accomplish disappears. I want to leave a mark on this life. Sometimes we even say, I want to leave it better than how I found it. But to leave nothing, that's unacceptable. So we resist meeting the emptiness of our life and the life of all beings. One of the blessings hidden in the fires of radical loss is the opportunity to ask the question, what is essential? What can I set fire to? This seems very strange. It's almost like a spiritual arsonist going around setting fires to everything we attach to. Now, I'm not saying literally, of course, but it's a kind of spiritual arson that we do not allow what is empty of self, of separateness, to fossilize. And because we have such a tight grip on this self and all the material that we've built to make it seem real, fire is probably necessary. Something as radical as fire is probably necessary to help us meet the reality of emptiness. Sometimes even in forests, I think it's called prescribed burning, where in order to maintain the health of a forest, it has to burn regularly. It has to make it possible for the sunlight to pierce the canopy of the woods in order to reach the soil which permit new life to occur. And so this metaphor of burning, sometimes we talk about cooking on the cushion, or this practice as a furnace, which burns the ego away. And it's really important not to have a smoky fire. To actually burn through completely. To be able to be 100% present. I remember often when I would make full prostrations, I would get down within maybe an inch of the bowing mat and not have my head going all the way down because I didn't want to mess up my hair. I could feel as soon as I got close to that floor, I stopped. And then I thought, Meido, burn, you know, go for it completely. Your bow is smoky. It hasn't burned through. I haven't used myself up. And similarly, you know, when we have to end relationships or start relationships, can we do that cleanly, wholeheartedly, with no trace, no no debris left over, you know, no smoke, no smoke. I know that now at my age, I can sort of understand Socrates prior to drinking the hemlock. Um, he he um, he asked his attendant to pay a debt that he had not yet paid in his life. It was actually a sacrifice of a rooster. But I can understand how this desire to clean up your life, you know, get it, burn everything through that needs, take care of the relationships. Don't leave any of this debris behind, if possible. Leave as few traces of yourself, of this self, as possible. It's quite a challenge. So not to have a smoky fire, how can we live in all of these different ways that we've built the house? How can we begin to skillfully deconstruct, leave no trace? All of our stuff, we can regard it all as being rented. We don't own anything. Everything here I'm renting from the universe, including this body, which I'm going to have to return. So burning through that attachment and just letting the gift flow, letting the gifts flow. And to be sure that our plans, our well-laid plans, are always provisional. To expect and sometimes even welcome the coming apart of our bodies. Not be surprised. And know that your reputation, what people think about you, your careers, know that your image is just a fleeting concept. It's just a mental formation, like a cloud. that comes apart and comes together and comes apart in all kinds of manifold ways. To keep this I don't know mind. To keep returning to the beginner. And to keep being utterly surprised at your own behavior and who you think you are. I hate to confess this. Don't tell anyone, okay? Ruin my reputation. My daughter, who lives in California, in Oakland, I hope to visit you sometime. She was visiting here in Pennsylvania, and we were watching Donald Trump in real time in Butler when he was giving his campaign speech, Butler, Pennsylvania, and we were watching that on the screen. And he was it was the speech in which he was there was an attempted assassination, and in real time we watched him be hit, scraped by a bullet. And you promise you won't tell anyone? My response was, yes. And even to this day, I said to myself, Meido, what? Was that you who said yes? Yeah, it was me. I really surprised myself. I'm not particularly beating myself up, but I'm really curious. Where did that come from? So examine, be curious. Don't be afraid of groundlessness or emptiness, because it opens up into fullness. Just as the phoenix grows out of the ashes, flies out of the ashes as this amazing, beautiful, mystical, mysterious bird. That through these fires in our lives, we can find this ultimate interconnectedness with all things, that we don't have to hide in our house, in the house of self. And we can learn to live in the vastness of our interconnectedness with all things. But we have to avoid this immediate sense of reconstructing the house. And this is our practice, to learn how to be at home in this vast emptiness, which is the universe. Not to be afraid and not to have to reconstruct immediately. I'm always amazed at how the one emotional response that the Bodhisattva must have, one of the virtues, is fearlessness. That it is possible to dwell in this boundlessness, this groundlessness with all beings. So Buddha's words upon his enlightenment, one of the versions, is as follows: through countless births, in the cycle of existence. I have run, not finding, although seeking, the builder of this house. And again, I face the suffering of new birth. O house builder, now you are seen. You shall not build a house again for me. All your beams are broken. The ridgepole is shattered. The mind has become freed from conditioning. The end of craving has been reached. So what was destroyed? What was burned through? This house of self. No more house builder. I'm free. Thank you. So, my friends out there across the states, the rivers, the mountains, the lakes, help me. Please contribute something to this offering today.
Meido?
Yes.
Choto, Dave here. And first, thank you. Helpful on so many levels, that presentation. So grateful to you for that. You used the metaphor of prescribed burns that keep a forest healthy and are essential to a forest being healthy. And I think what's implied there is that you can make a choice. The burn doesn't have to be something that happens to you. You can make a choice to do some of the burning yourself. Do you have thoughts on how to go about that in a skillful way?
I think that I don't want to be evasive, but our practice is the best way because our practice helps us to be aware of those places that we are fixed, where we need to set a fire. Because as I said, I think that we get so comfortable in this house that we've built that it's very, very difficult for us to take the initiative to light it and to say, okay, this needs to go. This question that I introduced, namely, what is essential? That's a question I often ask myself. That's a way of helping me know, okay, I mean, this seems very dramatic to say I'm going to light a fire to this relationship, but we understand what that means, that this is something that needs to burn in order for me to flourish or in order for me to help other beings. So on the one hand, our practice helps us be aware. For example, when I said yes, I'm not sure I would have responded to that um, in the way that I did. That is with great curiosity. Why did I say that? I just kind of would have gone with it. Yeah, I wish he had been killed. But it led me to explore this sense of aversion and hatred. So our practice, an awareness practice, really helps us ask this question, what is essential in our lives? and what can we let go of? What can we? It's a good fire. It's a good warming fire.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good question. How do we do it? It's always skillful means.
Hello.
More, please.
So my name is Joey, and I'm a
Hi.
student of the Village Zendo in New York, and I'm actually from Massachusetts. Um, your comments brought up a concept for me that I guess the words "fail boldly" represent. And what I mean by that is the idea that sometimes I feel like I want to do something, maybe interact with someone or do this or do that, but it's that house that you're talking about, that image of myself that I've built up that holds me back. And so the idea of failing boldly is a means of like getting rid of some of that and just go ahead and, reach out to someone or do this or do that and realize that the side effects of it are just so temporary and fleeting that it doesn't necessarily mean that that's me if I do fail. So your talk definitely resonated with me from that perspective.
Yeah, thank you so much. Fast failure, bold, bold failure. That brings to mind another fire image. I don't know how many of you. This was popular in the '60s, which is an old hippie. Um, there's this fire walk. Do you know what that is?
Oh, yeah.
Where, yeah, where you just walk through the fire.
Mhm.
Oh, I've never done it. I'm not that bold, but that image strikes me as being appropriate here. You know, just walk through the fire. Um, just let your feet get burned. It's okay. You're going to come out on the other side. There are not going to be a lot of repercussions or serious problems, especially if you walk boldly. That's the whole point. You have to just go for it, and not, you know, if you were too slow, you would burn up. So it's that bold action. And sometimes in our practice, we say, um, act, but don't wobble. Act fully, don't wobble. And so this is, you know, these are powerful images, which kind of counteract this sense of Buddhist practices being passive and, you know, and being, just whatever uh, kind of attitude. It's really, our practice is about um, burning completely. It's passionate. It's not passive at all. So thank you for that
You.
example.
Meido,
Somebody,
thank you so much.
Could you
Oh,
come?
you're asking.
Yeah.
Close.
second.
Mm, mm, mm. Ah, good to see you again. I'm very touched. Many of us in this room have literally been touched by fire. Santa Barbara has burned many times, and some folks here know that my son he documents fire. He documents these prescribed burns. He buries cameras and takes footage and has a big exhibit at a museum right now, which is very timely. It opened 2 days after the LA fire began. It's his mid-career survey of this life's work. His father was a firefighter and ended up as head of the county in the fire department. So he lived it as a kid all his life. And now he's an artist putting it together in terms of technology, science, and art with the university here and other institutions. So he has exhibits called Walk Through Wildfire. He's set them up several places in all over the world. And people walk through these digital images. And he just did an event in which he ignited digitally some very, very large cedar trees that had burned in the Westmont College fire when that college had a serious fire, and the 1,000 people were kept in an auditorium together for 24 hours to save them from the fire. So it's very real for us here, and it was hard for me to see those trees. I couldn't walk up and touch them. I wish I'd heard your talk first. So I could be bold enough to walk through these digital embers, and it was so hard to experience the sounds and the sights. So I'm very grateful that there's a sutra I can look at. I'm not familiar with it. I think it's going to be very helpful to live with that for a while, and also to take in those concepts of what's smoldering, because as we get to this age now, we've left some pretty serious piles of stuff that is smoldering and that needs extinguishing. So your suggestion, I'm asking, your suggestion is to use our practice more boldly, I think is what you're saying, is really to just go for it. Take it off the cushion. Yeah. And also, I have one last, I know I'm talking a while here. The thing I didn't quite get that I'd like to mention is that sense of Sangha, that we can burn together somehow, or maybe not rebuild together in the ways that might be assumed, but that in the LA fire, there were just extraordinary, and of course, Lisa knows the Bucket Brigade, just extraordinary efforts from the community to help people survive and help people eat and help people find clothes. And so that kind of rebuilding, I guess. I have some questions about how that looks for. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of what you said. It already contributes to this exploration that we're doing. There are no clear answers to this, because certainly there are situations where fires need to be put out as well as started. And so often, as you've indicated, it's when these radical situations happen, that we call them crises, tragedies, then this interconnectedness arises. So I'm not going to say that, let's set fire to San Francisco, or, but there does come a time, again, I don't want to sound biblical here or anything, but when the fire naturally happens because something else needs to be born. And what we notice is that community arises out of the ashes of tragedy. Unfortunately, maybe not I don't want to put a judgment on it, but that seems to be the way the human race comes together. So there's something horrific about fires and their destructive nature. But as again, in our practice, we see that things aren't that simple. that sometimes not only are fires regenerative, but we need to start them. Uh, so it's all about being present to what is needed from us, to being there. And that's what our practice helps us do. Is this a situation where we have to put out the fire? Is this a situation that we have to get all the children out of the house? Is this a situation in which we have to start the fire? So, I mean, the place of fire and burning has many, many different facets. And I think you helped us see some of those. So much appreciated.
I think we might have time for one more question. Patty,
May I?
please.
Ready? Meido.
Yes.
Wonderful to see you. It's Patty.
Hi, Patty.
Now, thank you. I just got my Dharma name. And I've thought of you many times since that winter practice period that was mentioned a little while ago. I was in that winter practice period with you, and I've thought of you many times. I just have a couple of thoughts. One is that wonderful feeling when you're traveling and all you have is this one bag. And really, it feels so light and so freeing, and all your essentials, your toothbrush, a change of clothes, are right there. And you realize I just really don't need anything else. And the other thing that came to my mind, and this is very concrete, sort of the way I always relate to Dharma talks, is an experience I had about 20 years ago when it came time to move my mother into a 24/7 care facility. And it took 4 of us a solid week to clean out her house just to get it to the point where the estate sale people could come in. We couldn't light a match to it because we needed to sell that house in order to, pay for her care. And now I fear I've done the same thing. We used to call it the Museum of Bob and Marilyn. Those are my parents' names. And I lived in that house in high school. And it was just jam-packed. And, when I received the precepts a week ago, one thing that was mentioned was not to hoard materials. And I thought, uh-oh, I have those looms and that yarn, and I haven't sat down and woven in over a decade. And I don't want to burden my son with trying to figure out what to do with all of our stuff. And the thought, and this might sound really odd and almost cold, but the thought came to me during those horrible fires in Los Angeles recently that if what if I mean, it's impossible. It's an impossible thought, but what if I could have traded places with some of those people who, they've still got the children in the house. They still have their family. They still have their work. I mean, there's a lot that's essential to them. And I have tons of stuff that is not essential to me, and how, freeing and unburdening that might have been to be able to trade places with them and just get rid of it all in a day or two. Just my thoughts as you were speaking.
Oh, beautiful thoughts. And this is what our practice is: exploring, being curious, going deeper. And this idea of leaving a lot of debris behind you. It would perhaps look at this, I have this amazing house and I love beautiful things. And the whole idea here in part, is to hold everything lightly. Hold everything lightly. The other day, we had a Qigong at the Zendo. One of our Qigong teacher was here. And as we were leaving, he noticed a chair that was a really beautiful chair, completely made of oak and an antique. And he said, I really like that chair. And I said, would you like it? And he said, yeah, I would. So I said, well, just take it.
I knew that's what you were going to say. That is wonderful. So did
Yeah,
he do
so he did. He did. Sometimes I've done this a number of times with people who have just said, I love that thing. And I would say, well, it's yours. And in a way, sometimes I'm always surprised that they actually take it, you know? Okay, I didn't really mean for you to take it, but they took it. But yeah, he took it. So I'm kind of getting used to just holding everything lightly. It's not that you don't have appreciate your looms and your yarn and your beautiful chairs but you know you're renting them and you're keeping it moving. You're keeping the gift moving. It's all gifts. Oh, we're gonna have to give it back anyway. So it's wonderful for you to now my daughter I go through the house with her when she comes to visit. I say, do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want? No, Mom, I don't like your taste. So she doesn't want anything. And so I'm actively trying to figure out how, because my parents died with hardly anything. My father had a wristwatch and a good suit and a wallet. And and it was a delight, you know, just to be free of having to figure out what to do with all of this stuff. So many important questions to practice with for us. So thank you so much
you?
for all of that. Yes. And please invite me back sometime. I would love to get to know you more.
Meido, thank you. Thank you so much and, for the presentation that was really centered on something that's so alive and smoldering for you right now. And it was so timely for so many of us here. So very, very grateful to you.
Good.
And we normally close our session with the four vows and then announcements. You're welcome to stay, but I want to turn off the recording, and I hope I don't lose you in the process. So. And Elisa, I'll turn this over to you.
Four vows, and you'll find them on page